everyone, welcome back to my home office, and we are talking about the SWOT, and we're going to focus on looking at the external components. You know, the SWOT has four components to it, right? It is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths and weaknesses are internal, and opportunities and threats are external to the organization. So part of what you really need to think through is, in terms of the internal strengths and weaknesses, we start to look at strengths as things that boost our profitability, that we want to utilize to take advantage of the external opportunities we see. The weaknesses are things that depress our profitability, get in the way of us being able to take advantage of opportunities, and that we want to try to eliminate if at all possible and minimize if we can. Now, the external, the opportunities and the threats, the opportunities come from that macro environment and the factors there that we can take advantage of to create extra profitability, boost our business overall, and create success. The threats are things that we have no control over. I can't make it go away. I cannot make CMS DIR fees go away. They're not going anywhere, right? So they're a threat to my business. I can't eliminate them. What I want to do is try to protect against how damaging they are by taking advantage of our strengths to do that. So we're going to focus right now on that macro environment and really talk through how we put that together, the 6 broad categories, and you'll pull items from these areas to fill out the opportunities and threats component of your SWOT. All right, so let's talk about the economic. So economic are things like interest rates, unemployment rates, consumer price index, trends in the GDP, stock market, disposable income levels. I mean, here's the reality when we're talking healthcare. That comes from disposable income. If I have to make a decision about whether I am going to put food on the table for my kids or get my prescription drug, and I know that the prescription drug could help minimize my pain and lengthen my life, I may be willing to just be in pain and have a shorter lifespan because my kids will be gone by the time I run out of those years. And right now my kids need food on the table. So some of the non-compliance issues you may have in the pharmacy come down to healthcare gets paid for out of disposable income. I don't have any. Now, the rules and regulations, the law surrounding having to have healthcare insurance, although there's still a large group of people who aren't covered, that does provide some coverage, but not enough sometimes to offset the fact that if I have to go pick up a drug and pay copay, that's disposable income. Interest rates can have impacts on how you expand your business. When is a right time to actually get a loan to expand your business? The lower the interest rates, the better that can be for you. Unemployment rates can sometimes be helpful if you have large numbers of unemployed who are highly skilled or skilled in the way you need, but can also be a detriment if you have unemployment rates that are very low and tight, and those that are unemployed are not skilled in the way you would need. And so you would have a hard time hiring if you were opening a pharmacy in a particular location. Now, these are not all of the economic factors we could cover, but it gives you kind of an overview of some of the things you start to think about. Global. The global area, increasing global trade, currency exchange, growth of foreign economies. As foreign economies grow, they put greater demands on oil supplies, drug supplies, things of that nature that before they didn't need or didn't have access to. And as that economy grows, so do their demands. So it puts higher demands in those areas. Trade agreements, which we've seen impact lately, tariffs in terms of prices of items, things that are coming in, the overall increase of those prices. That could also have an impact on raw goods for drugs and things of that nature. The World Trade Organization, terrorism, and now you could add to this in the global scale, the pandemic, right? So when we have things where borders do have to be shut, where things like that happen, what kind of opportunity could that create, and what kind of threat does that create to your particular business? And depending on the business we're talking about, that varies greatly, and your location, right? So if we look at the healthcare as an industry, we look at pharmacy in specific, then you start looking at the global impact and where that impact could exist. So, look at the supply chain for pharmaceuticals and drugs, where they're manufactured, where the raw goods are found. So when we see shortages in specific drugs, it could be that the raw goods are no longer available or in short supply. It could be something broken in the supply chain, which is part of what we'll see with this pandemic. So, how do those play out into your SWOT and what you find relevant? Technology. We've got genetic engineering. We've got internet technology, CAD and CAM, which is computer-aided design and computer-aided manufacturing. We also now have the 3D design. That is really exploding in what that can do and how it can be used in engineering and in other ways. Miniaturization, wireless communication, as we see for our needs in these kind of classes and what's happening right now, how we can tap into technology to continue forward so that you don't lose a semester. How can that work for organizations? So technology, when we look at, we don't need patients flooding hospitals, urgent care, possibly being infected if they have something else going on, infecting others if they have this particular virus. So that's where we get telemedicine becoming a stronger offering and service during this time. Well, if we didn't have the technology available for that, we wouldn't have that to lean on at this time. So what kind of opportunity does that create? Once this becomes something that works as this pandemic plays out, will telemedicine have a resurgence in use? Will medicine change in some ways? Because this has proven it can and does work and can streamline certain things. It'll be interesting to see how that will kind of develop as we move forward. Nanotechnology would be something else. There was an article, and this was maybe a year or 2 years ago. There was a experiment with tattoos that could actually, the color of the tattoo indicated blood sugar level. So you could look at the tattoo, and the tattoo would tell you, based on the color it was currently at, where your blood sugar was. So that's a form of technology. Some technology comes out and it's not marketable. It's never going to make it to market. It could be because of the expense, the low demand, the inability to build demand over time. But that doesn't mean that those kind of experiments don't have an impact as things move forward and can create opportunities or threats. Just look at how an Apple Watch has changed how we look at wearables, and how wearables have started to really be used in many ways, created opportunities for fitness, for research, all those types of things. Demographics. So demographics, an aging population, rising affluence levels, changes in ethnic composition in different neighborhoods, geographic distribution of the population. The geographic distribution of the population is interesting because that tends to kind of be on a pendulum, decade to decade. You'll see a revitalization of urban areas. And then you'll see a movement out of urban areas into the suburbs. And then you'll see the reverse. So this kind of is a fluctuation that occurs on a regular basis. Where is that for your community? What does it look like? Does it create opportunity? Could it be a threat? Increasing disparities in income levels, and unfortunately, looking at the situation we're currently in, that is probably going to become even a greater divide. Those disparities are in the next year or 2 years as people recover from what this does to their businesses and just their economic reality. And so as we look at that, that's also going to be something that starts to play out too, can have an impact, can be a threat for your business. I mean, if I'm a business that really depends on the middle class and this is going to damage the middle class, what kind of threat is that to my business long term, right? And so I start to think through who my market is, again, my target market, what that means for me in terms of the demographics. Now, the socio-cultural component of the macro environment is also a really interesting one. Women in the workforce, we talked about Rosie the Riveter and how women flooded the workplace and manufacturing during World War II and World War I to help kind of make up for all the men that were gone. And then when the men came back, the women were forced out of the workforce. But now, You look at the divide of women in the workforce, and in most working environments, the percentage of men to women, and they're going to be a pretty strong grouping. And so women in the workforce changes things. It changes how we deal with children. We have right now, a unique situation for my generation and for some millennials, in that we have aging parents that need care and children that still need care. And so we're not just focused on one or the other. We have both we have to deal with. Acquisition and retention of employees becomes different depending on the dynamics you have in terms of the gender differences. Women as key decision makers for household goods. If you look at someone, if you look at Home Depot and you look at Lowe's and you walk into each one, you will notice a distinct difference on what gender they are focused on appealing to. Lowe's very much made a decision that they were going to appeal to women because women are key decision makers when it comes to household goods. So all of the garden and the different types of kitchen appliances. If you look through that store, it's brighter, it's cleaner, it's organized in a different way. The aisles are wider. And if you go into Home Depot, it's for men and construction professionals. They have the other items there that, if I'm going in for my household and I'm the key decision maker, that I can see those items. But if I'm the one making those decisions, making a choice about the two and where I'm going to go, it's got to appeal to me. And so, defining who are the key decision makers for the business that you have. Women or men? Is it joint? Who are you trying to appeal to? Temporary workers. Gen X is really a generation that is known for temporary workers. When my generation started graduating from college, we had a bust in technology. So, Silicon Valley laying off a lot of people. And so you had a lot of highly educated and skilled professionals that a business could get for as cheap as hiring someone fresh out of college with no proven skill yet. And so that made it really tough for my generation to find work. So we're really the generation that started the gig economy, where temporary workers will come in, will fix things. We're very entrepreneurial, and that's one of the reasons why. Some of the other socio-cultural trends you'll see are concern for fitness, health, wellness, concern for the environment and the impacts of what we purchase on the environment. Later marriage age, this also, like the movement in and out of urban and suburban areas, really kind of, you see a fluctuation generation to generation. If I have a young female who has just graduated college, hasn't developed a lot of skill yet, and starts to have children and steps out of the workplace, that's not as damaging for me as a business. As Gen X, for instance, my cousin, she didn't start having kids till she was 40. And she managed high-end PGA golf tour golf courses. So she's the one that kept that grass the way it looked, kept those facilities the way they looked. It's a highly skilled position, and there are not a lot of people that had her education and skill to do that. And when she stepped out of the workforce to start having children, that put more of a pressure on an organization, because it's not like going out and getting more of her was easy, right? People with those skills, and especially that had been developed over 20 years of work, just wasn't as prevalent or as easy to find. So, the later marriage age and later families creates a little more pressure when you're providing those benefits and people are stepping out of the marketplace and your organization in the workplace for a while, versus the younger generation when they step out. It's a little easier to replace and cover for them when they're gone because the skills are not as developed yet. These are some of the socio-cultural trends you see, and that you really look at to start to determine how that can impact your business and where there can be opportunities and threats. Remember, that's what we're focusing on here. The other is political, governmental, and legal. So the Affordable Health Care Act, how has that changed healthcare? It's changed a lot in terms of how CMS looks at performance pay. In other words, I'm not paying fee for service anymore. I don't care as much that the patient just comes in and picks up X. I care about the outcomes that patient gets because they came in and you were supposed to do X, Y, and Z. And so that movement away from fee for service to pay for performance really was driven partially by the Affordable Health Care Act. ADA of 1990 and ADAA of 2008, so the American Disabilities Act Amendment Act, where we started really looking at making sure that reasonable accommodations were made for employees that have disabilities. Deregulation, increase in minimum wage, increased regulation, taxation, legislation. These are all things, State Board of Pharmacy regulations. These are all part of the macro environment. They're political, governmental, and legal issues that can be a threat to your business you have no control over, and or they can be a real opportunity for you if you look at them and see a way that you can use your strengths in your organization to take advantage of them in the marketplace. So this gives you a perspective on the microenvironment and how to use that and start thinking about it to pull different things into your opportunities and threats of your SWOT. You need to scan the environment, look at what's happening, not just in healthcare. If I need to get information about socio-cultural things, I'm not going to find that in healthcare magazines or research. I'm going to have to go out and really try to view what's happening. Now, there are think tanks that focus on those and really set the trends and will report on the trends for a decade at a time, what they see coming and happening over the next decade. And they base that on the macroenvironmental analysis. Faith Popcorn and the Popcorn Report is one of those. I remember my mom bought their next report, the Popcorn Report, at the end of the 80s. I think it was 89. She brought that home. So the year I graduated high school. And I read it, and it was fascinating. Now remember, this is when, she was selling the Canon Cat, which was one of the first desktop computers that still had DOS. Microsoft did not exist. You had to type in code to get something to print. That was this time period when the Popcorn Report came out. And when that came out, one of the trends identified in that was a socio-cultural trend, and also based on technology advances, that was over the next decade, online shopping was going to become the wave of the future. That everyone that was currently focused on, brick and mortar shops, stores with a door, needed to step back and start being prepared to handle online shopping, merchandise, and retail. Now, think about the time period. That was 1989 when the Popcorn Report came out. And then think about how things have shifted from then to where we are now. And where technology was at that point when that came out. So that's where those reports that really are looking at societal trends can be helpful in filling out these opportunities and threats. You don't always have to be the one to scan and find all of those, put all those things together. You can take advantage of some of those think tanks that do that for you. All right, this is the end of our discussion about the macroenvironmental analysis. Stay safe, and I will see you next time.